Good afternoon. Okay. Now, I'm hoping everyone has a chair. It's nice to see such a great crowd. Firstly, let me welcome you all to the 2016 3-minute thesis grand final here at La Trobe University. My name is Dr. Shane Huntington. I'm an intruder. I'm from Melbourne Uni, but somehow I managed to escape for the day to come out here and do this more important event than my normal job. I'm also a broadcaster on 3RRR and have been doing the science program there for the last 25 years, and I think that's how I got this gig actually. Most importantly, I'd like to acknowledge that we're standing on the land of the Wurundjeri people and that these people have been custodians of this land for thousands of years. Now, today is one of the very exciting jobs that I get to do. As a broadcaster, I get to interview people for somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes. My attention span's about 4 minutes. So the 3-minute thesis is perfect for me because I tend to nod off, and if you've ever been in the studio with me, you'll know that I glaze over in about the 5th minute and you just have to keep talking. Some of our contestants today will hopefully, if they're good enough and they manage to keep their nerves in check, will be able to come on 3RRR with me in the coming months and represent the university, and I'm sure they'll be as good at that as they are today. And I've seen some of them practicing this morning and they're looking fantastic, so you're in for a real treat. Now, before we get into the details of the contest, I'd like to invite Dr. Claire Wright, one of La Trobe's academics, an author, broadcaster and public commentator. That sounds risky. Who will give a short opening address entitled Being an Engaged Scholar, otherwise known as a Big Show-Off. Claire.
You're a lot taller than I am. This is not unusual. Well, thanks for giving me an opportunity to say a few words. Saying a few words for me is very difficult. I would fail the 3-minute thesis at the outset. The bell would have gone off and I wouldn't have even gotten past my introduction. So it's a bit like the donkey in Shrek. It's getting me to shut up that's the problem. And I'll get you, Misha, to give me a little, I don't even know how long I've got. 2, 5? 5. Give me a little hoy, eh? So I've just been asked to give just a brief introduction to the idea of being what's can be called a public intellectual or an engaged scholar. That's a reasonably recent term for it. I've also been called a celebrity intellectual. I was in a list that The Age did a while ago of Australia's top 20 celebrity intellectuals, and somebody else on that list made the comment that you're damned on both sides, given that half of Australians hate intellectuals and the other half hate celebrities. But I think that it's a good thing to be. In fact, for me, it's the only way that I can be. If I was alone in my office over in the history department, churning out journal articles, I would go absolutely mad in about 5 minutes. For me, being an academic has always been an opportunity to basically fund research and have my research and my books funded in a way that allows me to be able to engage properly and deeply with the research that I'm interested in doing, but also to give me the opportunity to spruik the results of that research, to disseminate that research to as wide an audience as possible. It's something that I've always been very interested in. I did a BA in history at Melbourne Uni and then an MA in a field called public history at Monash University, a course unfortunately that it's no longer offered. And in that course we were actually taught how to take scholarly research and translate it into different ways to communicate to a number of different audiences, whether that is whether that is through museums, through journalism, through the broadcast media, in writing commissioned reports, in doing heritage studies. So as an historian, those are some of the sorts of ways in which you can get the results of your research out there. And I know that this is different for the different disciplines across the university. I actually really love the idea of the 3-minute thesis, not just because it provides a platform for students to be able to discuss with other academics what they've been doing, but for us to get to talk in an interdisciplinary manner, which I think we have very few opportunities to do, not just in this university, in all universities. The humanities and the sciences don't talk very well to each other. other. And I think if we can't talk well to each other, how can we hope to talk to broader audiences as well? So these are the things that have really sort of fired me up over the years, at writing for a general audience. I've done things like write for The Conversation, write opinion pieces for The Age, but also to keep grounded through work like through museums, exhibition spaces. I work as a consultant historian as well as an academic. I've been very lucky to be 100% research scholar through my entire career. I haven't had to ever do teaching, and that's not to suggest I wouldn't like to do teaching. It's just that, as we all know, teaching and administration takes up an enormous amount of your time. I think it's difficult to be all things to all people, and as a researcher, a pure researcher, it allows me to think differently about who I might want to be talking to, who I want my audience to be. And recently, one of my main audiences has been through television. I've made 2 documentaries for the ABC that I've both conceived of and developed and written, and one of those I presented as well. And at the moment, I'm having the great pleasure of turning the book that I wrote, that was the results of my postdoctoral research, a book called The Forgotten Rebels of Eureka. I wrote all the sort of academic journal articles that I needed to do to pass muster with the Academy, to fulfil the bounds of my research grant, and then I also wrote a book for a general audience, the book that I wanted to write, the book that I felt that I had in me, and fortunately it's gone on to be quite a commercial success, and now I've sold the rights to a production company who are making it into an 8-part drama series. And I've been engaged in the writing of that with them as well. And that's incredibly exciting for an historian who's somebody who's used to sticking to the facts, to have to be able to start to let my imagination fly and suddenly be able to put characters in a room together that I have no evidence that these people even knew each other. I now have to work out who's smooching who and who's hating who, and I'm watching a lot of Outlander at the moment to take my inspiration from that. And so I suppose I'm just suggesting some of the ways that it's possible to think about where your research might go. I think the sky's the limit. I'm hoping to stand at the Logies and one day and soon and thank Trobe for the support that it has given me in bringing this research that started here in the university out to as wide an audience as possible. I think that it is an incredibly rewarding thing to do. I've always believed that you should be able to sit on the tram and talk and tell the person next to you what the topic of your thesis is. It's not something that should be that difficult. You should be able to engage them with your enthusiasm, with your ideas. Nothing is too conceptually difficult, and you are never above telling the person next to you on the tram what it is you do every day of your life. And if you can't be enthusiastic about it, how can you expect others to be enthusiastic about it too? Enthusiasm is infectious, so if I can leave you with a little half-time Ron Barassi inspirational speech, I would just say, be passionate about what you do. Desire to communicate about it. Feel the need and the urgency to communicate what you do every day of your life to the people who are around you, and they might just become enthused too. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you for giving me time to get past my little coughing fit in the corner there, which I apologise in advance if that happens later. I'm getting over a cold. Now, many of you will be aware that the 3-minute thesis is a skills development program that challenges research high degree students to explain the research to general audiences in a non-specific way in just 3 minutes. This is something that people generally are not trained to do during their programs, so the way in which we go about training students to do this at universities is quite extraordinary and quite extreme, and I'm sure if you asked most of them 6 months ago whether they thought they'd be doing this now, the answer would be a firm no, because, well, except for those who entered last year, but for most, it's quite a learning curve to do this, and it's something that many of us, myself included, after 25 years of broadcasting on radio, would not feel comfortable doing at all. I'd rather do Claire's version, where I don't have a script and I just chat for a while. That works best for me. Now, the 3MT is now an international competition as well, so it's one of those things where you get to go to many other places if you do well, and the number of universities that are entering this program now is accelerating quite rapidly. It's not a surprise given the need for science to have a really big push into the political decisions of our world and the sorts of decisions that are being made around the globe. So it's good to see that this style of communication is starting to be valued. Of course, at La Trobe here, these competitions have been happening all year, and those who've managed to get to the seats down the back today have been part of the school and or college competitions throughout the year and have managed to get through. Now, before we start with our first contestant, I want to introduce our judges. So to my right, your left, is Professor Jane Long, who's the Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor here at the university. Welcome. Mr. Misha Ketchnell, who is the Managing Editor of The Conversation, which I'm sure you're all aware of. I'm not going to introduce you again, Claire, but we'll give you a clap anyway because you gave such a good presentation. And Dr. Frank Udocevic, I hope I got that right, Frank, who is the Research Manager at the Royal Botanical Gardens, Victoria. Welcome. Now, there are some very specific rules today, which you can see on the slide. I don't expect you to read those. Hopefully the contestants down the back know them though. There are judging criteria that our 4 judges have been read into in quite a detailed way. But essentially as an audience, I suspect you're better on this one to go by your gut. Okay, if it makes sense to you, you feel entertained, you feel as though you're coming away and learning something, and my piece of it, you feel as though you haven't been pumped with facts, but you've gained some knowledge. That to me is one of the real essences of a great presentation in 3-minute thesis contests. The only reason they turned up, of course, is there's some amazing prizes. The winner gets a $5,000 research support grant. The runner-up a $2,000 research support grant. I think you can just spend that all on travel. So, business class. No, you cannot. And then there's the People's Choice Award, which you'll get to vote on, which is a $200 book voucher, which you can spend on whatever you want. That's totally up to you. Now, there is, of course, the Asia-Pacific competition that follows on from these, and the winner will receive travel and accommodation to represent La Trobe in that competition, which is being held this year at the University of Queensland, which isn't a bad place to be, although the weather's not too bad here at the moment either, so good place. Now, with all of those details out of the way, we're going to get our first presenter up. Now, Mika Mulder is from the School of Humanities and Social Sciences in the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Commerce. Now, there are 3 things of interest I'd like you to know about Mika before I tell you about her topic for today. First of all, a current research project aims at documenting the endangered minority language in India called, and I'm going to try my best to get this right, I think it's Muklam Tansa. Yeah. And in addition to that, Mika started her PhD and she decided for some unusual reason that she would never ever want to visit India and that she didn't want to be one of the only foreigners in a village, that feeling. It turns out that her research requires her to do exactly these things. So I'm not sure how A and B, anyway. And true to her Dutch nature, and for those of you who have Dutch friends, as I do, will know that they all seem to have to own a $40 second-hand bicycle and use it every day to get to work. On that note, Mika, I'll invite you up to the stage to present on your topic, Documenting an Endangered Language.
$6,000. That is approximately the number of languages spoken around the world today. I have a question for you. How many languages do you think there will be 100 years from now? I'd like you to make an estimate in your mind. UNESCO predicts that already by the end of this century, half of our languages will have disappeared. So if you had a number in mind lower than the current 6,000, you were thinking in the right direction. One of the languages that is in danger of disappearing is Muklum Tangsa. The Muklum Tangsa people live in northeast India, in an area known as a linguistic hotspot, an area packed with languages. The region only recently has become accessible to outsiders, and we currently have no good description of any Tangsa language. The Muklum Tangsa are few in number, a couple of thousand. They have a rich oral tradition and no standardized writing system. They're feeling the pressure and the attractive force of the larger languages in their environment. I've lived with the Muklum Tangsa people for 5 months. They taught me their language, and I made recordings. Recordings of discussion sessions on traditional practices and recordings of their stories, as told by the elders. We spent hours in the evening sitting around the fire talking about just language. The results of this work, my thesis, will consist of 3 components: a grammatical description, a collection of spoken texts, and a vocabulary. Why should we document Muklum Tangsa? Why should we document any endangered language? When an unwritten language dies, it represents not only the loss of a unique communication system, but also the loss of traditional knowledge that belongs to a community. Think about all the oral history, the myths, the songs, the rituals that are encoded by the language. In fact, we know from experience that this knowledge starts dying away well before the last speaker of a language dies. By recording and by putting into writing, we preserve some of this precious knowledge. The results of my research are a tool in the hands of the Muklum Tangsa community for revitalizing their language if needed. Also, my thesis will be the first comprehensive description of this unique language and will therefore make a substantial contribution to our linguistic knowledge of this understudied region. Let me take you back to the beginning of this story. There are approximately 6,000 languages spoken around the world today. Big languages are getting bigger and push their way into the foreground, while at the same time, some smaller languages often become smaller and are pushed into the background. But they do not have to disappear from view entirely. Not if we decide to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mika. Fantastic start. Okay, next up is Hannah MacDougall. Hannah's from the Trobe Business School and the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Commerce. Now, there again are 3 items I wanted to mention to you about Hannah. First of all, her PhD explored para-athlete well-being and how this can be improved through training the critical skills of attention and focus. I think a lot of us could use those skills, actually. When she's not, now this is going to scare you folks. It scared me when I read it. When she's not working with athletes, Hannah's riding her bike up to 500 kilometres a week. I don't drive that far. No, I really don't drive that far. And I live a long way from the city. In a bid for the World Championships next year. That is quite something to be training for. Well done. It's actually more, apparently, than she drives her car. If you're travelling by bike 500 kilometres a week, I don't know where else you would drive. So, now, given this creates an incredible appetite, and Hannah is in a bit of a bid to find apparently Melbourne's best baked eggs, and she would like suggestions as to where to get them later on in the break. So put your thinking caps on, or for those of you who don't have thinking caps, just Google them and you'll find out. Today, Hannah is going to be speaking on the topic of core strength for the brain, well-being and performance enhancement for para-athletes.
Ben Cousins, from the sport of AFL, considered by some to be in the top 50 players of all time, and an alcohol addiction. Michael Gallagher, from the sport of cycling, Paralympic world record holder, sent home from Rio last week for testing positive to drugs. Sandy Blythe, from the sport of wheelchair basketball, Paralympic gold medalist, followed by suicide. What do all of these athletes have in common? Their well-being was negatively impacted both during and after their elite sport careers. Now, for far too long, sports psychologists have used a red cape approach when helping athletes like these who have already fallen off the cliff. They've used a deficit-based model and focused on what's going wrong. Now, in direct contrast to this, my PhD has used a green cape approach. We focus on building strengths, mental health, and well-being. And in a nutshell, my research question was, how can we improve the well-being of parasport athletes? And I conceptualised this concept, which is literally bigger than Usain Bolt's trophy cabinet, through the two theoretical traditions of hedonia, aka pleasure, and eudaimonia, aka human spirit. And after I had measured all of these athletes' well-being, I did a gold medal winning approach of a randomised control trial aimed at improving both the well-being and the performance of parasport athletes. And I dubbed this program Core Strength for the Brain. So instead of doing millions of sit-ups, we trained the critical skills of attention and focus through different exercises such as body scans, savouring chocolate ridiculously slowly, and mindfulness. So now, if I could ask you all to gently close your eyes and bring your attention and your focus to a smile that's gently forming on your face and all of those muscles that are helping that smile. And now, just opening your eyes, noticing some of the smiles that were created as a result of the program on the slide behind me. So my contribution was to not only significantly improve the well-being performance of parasport athletes, but to have them say to me things like, Han, there's now light at the end of my tunnel. Words cannot express what you and the program have given me. Rewarding research? Most definitely. And will I now be getting Michael Gallagher to sign up for my program? You bet I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, 2 down, 6 to go. Lisafurlong is next from the School of Allied Health within the College of Science, Health and Engineering. Lisa's research is looking at the use of technology in the management of childhood speech sound disorders. In addition to being a PhD student, she actually still runs a speech pathology clinic, her own private practice. And I do find this a bit disturbing, but Lisa used to throw grenades, use pistols, rifles and machine guns because her previous career was with the Royal New Zealand Air Force. Why'd you give that one up? There's a New Zealand joke in there somewhere, folks. Lisa, the stage is yours.
We've all had those conversations with Siri, the ones where she calls Aaron instead of Erin, or where she takes offence at a word you didn't actually say. How frustrating is it? For us, very. But for children with speech sound disorders, a speech recognition system like Siri could prove to be very useful. More than 40% of the children paediatric speech pathologists see have a speech sound disorder. A child with a speech sound disorder has difficulty producing the sounds in words. They may change, add or delete sounds. For example, they might say wabbit for rabbit or snake for snake. These children require frequent, effective and intensive therapy. Without this, they're at an increased risk of later social and academic difficulties. But for many families, accessing speech therapy is difficult due to a workforce shortage of speech pathologists and barriers around cost and socioeconomic status. For families living in rural and remote areas, it is even harder. 30% of the country's children live in a rural or remote area where less than 1% of speech pathologists work. So how could a speech recognition system like Siri help these children? I am working within a larger team to develop a virtual speech pathologist. This will be a technology-based intervention in the form of a mobile application for use by children with speech sound disorders to improve their speech. It will be performance-based. The activities and feedback will be guided by the user's performance and, in time, fully autonomous, allowing children to practice their speech by themselves. We're going to do this through the use of speech recognition technology, which will automatically analyse the child's speech and immediately tell them which words they've said correctly and which words they haven't. Currently, there are no other mobile applications using speech recognition technology, which would make the virtual speech pathologist the first of its kind. My role within the team is to provide design recommendations from a clinical perspective. As part of this, I have interviewed speech pathologists to understand how they manage children with speech sound disorders and to get their perspective on the development of a virtual speech pathologist. I have helped the computer engineering team members build their tailored speech recognition system by collecting speech samples of 450 words from 29 children. A selection of these words have been used to train the speech recognition system. In time, the system will be tested to see whether it can reliably determine the accuracy of spoken words. So yes, Siri can be frustrating, but for children with speech sound disorders, a system like Siri could be their key to speech therapy and a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Next up is Rachel Loney-Howes. Now, Rachel's part of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences within the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Commerce. Rachel's just returned from New Orleans on the When the Levee Breaks study tour with her undergraduates, who she mentored while she was away. In another life, Rachel trained as a ballet dancer, actually, and so was contemplating entering the Dance Your Thesis contest. Sadly, this is not it, but maybe later if everyone wants to hang around for a while. She's also an avid cat lover. Are we talking about big cats or little cats?
All cats.
Do you have more than 3 cats?
No.
That's okay. Just like to check that as a public service. Her topic today is being seen, being heard, and being believed. The stage is yours.
In 2011, a young woman named Savannah was raped by 2 members of her high school lacrosse team. The boys recorded the assault, posted it online, and it went viral. As punishment, they received 50 hours of community service. So Savannah decided to post their names on Twitter. She felt as though the criminal justice system had failed her, and although the boys' sentences were eventually revised, sadly her story is too common. As many as 1 in 5 women, according to the World Health Organization, and 1 in 20 men will experience some form of sexual violence during their lives. This means that we probably all know someone that this has happened to, but perhaps they never told you because they didn't think that you'd believe them, or they went to the police and they didn't believe them either, or they blamed them for what happened. It's because of these reasons that online tools like social media have become so vital for victims to be able to speak out about their injustices and to engage in new forms of social activism. And this is what my thesis explores: the nature, use and scope of online spaces like Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr and blogs for anti-rape activism. I interviewed managers and creators of these online campaigns. I surveyed their users and I did an analysis of the content and interactions happening in these spaces. I wanted to know how and why they're being used, what's different about the online sphere, and is it actually possible to generate any meaningful social change through these new forms of activism? I found that some, like Savannah, do use them to name and shame perpetrators of rape and to highlight the impossibility of the criminal justice system to be able to effectively provide justice for victims of rape. The veil of silence, shame and secrecy that stops many victims from coming forward offline means that these online spaces have become platforms where victims can come out and claim their experiences. Most, though, use them as a means of garnering public support and recognition, not just of their own experiences, but to highlight that rape is a serious social, political and legal problem. What victims and activists want is to be seen, heard and believed. While some, like Savannah, are able to find this kind of support online, many are still not. And so my thesis seeks to analyse why this is and highlights the devastating impact not being seen, not being heard, and not being believed can have on survivors' lives. I know that with this research, I can't take back the violence inflicted on the lives of the people that I work with, nor can I alone end the violence. But what I can do is use their voices to help influence the public, law and policy makers, to ensure that survivors get the support that they need so that people like these up here on the slide will always be seen, heard, and believed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Next up is Ingrid Wilson, who's from the School of Nursing and Midwifery from the College of Science, Health and Engineering. Ingrid had a lifelong interest in, has a lifelong interest in gender issues and is passionate about her topic. We discussed it actually before when we were waiting in the foyer. In particular, preventing alcohol-related violence against women. The timing of her PhD actually couldn't be more perfect because Ingrid had the chance to present as an expert witness to the Royal Commission on Family Violence recently. Congratulations on that. When she's not sitting at her desk writing up her thesis, Ingrid can actually be found hanging upside down doing circus training. To let that settle for her very, very serious topic, living the cycle of drinking and intimate partner violence. Ingrid.
You know that sound? The clink of the bottle as you take it from the fridge, the twist of the cap and the soft hiss of the gas and bubbles escaping. It conjures up feelings of pleasure, reward, relaxation and enjoyment. But what if that same sound signalled for you the start of a cycle of terror and fear, of unpredictability and the potential for violence? Decades of research the world over has shown a consistent link between heavy and binge drinking and the risk of violence occurring in intimate relationships. Where a male partner drinks heavily, or both partners have been drinking, violence is more likely to happen. And while alcohol may not cause violence, we know that it makes things worse. Victims, who are more often female, suffer more serious injuries when a violent partner has been drinking. But what this research doesn't tell us is about the dynamics of drinking and violence and the role of alcohol in the initiation and escalation to violence. My study aimed to answer this question through in-depth interviews with 18 Victorian women who had lived experience of violence from an alcohol-affected partner. These women told me that violence was experienced as a cycle, intimately connected to recognised stages of their partner's drinking. These women described with chilling precision the change from the fun and loving partner at the start of the drinking cycle, who became increasingly more aggressive towards her the more intoxicated he became. And while that switch to escalated aggression didn't always happen, it happened enough for women to feel afraid every time he started drinking. And the return to normal at the end of the drinking and violent episode when the partner was sober presented women with relief, but also left them with a challenged sense of reality. As one woman said, as soon as there was no alcohol, it was just like it never happened. My research is the first of its kind to represent these dynamics of drinking and intimate partner violence. But importantly, I mapped to this cycle the strategies that women use to keep themselves and their children safe during the violent cycle, which are critical insights for safety planning for other women sharing this experience. In Australia, alcohol-related violence is far too common, but drinking is part of our national identity. By giving voice to women's experience, my work reveals the hidden side of our drinking culture. This research will inform the design of interventions to prevent and reduce this form of violence. And it will also change practice by giving frontline workers a new tool to work with men and women caught up in this cycle. So the next time you hear that clink or that soft hiss, think about those for whom the sounds mean something quite different. The hidden victims living the cycle of drinking and intimate partner violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. Next up is Sangeeta from the School of Molecular Sciences in the College of Science, Health and Engineering. Now, Sangeeta is a physiotherapist, which is great. I'll chat to you later. And with her research, she's trying to find answers about fixing painful shoulders. Second reason I need to chat to you later. Being a physio, she's passionate about health and fitness, and outside of her busy work and studies, she's a long-distance runner and a bike rider. But of particular note is the fact that she's a very keen traveller. And in fact, she's always on the go and has travelled to some 17 different countries in the last 4 years alone. Where do you get the time? While studying and working. So anyway, good effort. Her topic today is, can you fix my shoulder? The stage is yours.
Hello everyone. If I ask you to tell me how many times you need to use your shoulders every day, I'm sure you won't have an answer. Let's try. So you need it when you go to the toilet, to have shower, to put on your clothes, do your hair, prepare your meal, to eat, drink, lift and carry stuff, for washing, cleaning, driving, gardening, and hundreds of other little things that you can't even count. Now just imagine that every time you do these things and it hurts in your shoulder. So how frustrated and disabled you're going to feel if you can't do these simple little things without pain. So yes, shoulder pain doesn't kill you, but it doesn't let you enjoy your life either. And that's why we need to fix it. Now most of us think that the joint pain or muscle pain only happens to serious athletes or old nanas. But when it comes to shoulder joint, everyone is at risk. And that's because it's the most flexible and most unstable joint of your body. It's like a ball in socket, where the ball or top of your arm bone moves inside the socket in different directions. And because the socket is very shallow, it can slip out of it very easily. So what causes it? Well, majority of shoulder problems are caused by damaging a structure called rotator cuff. It's a group of 4 muscles that sits on top of your shoulder, and its main job is to stop the arm bone from slipping out. But the problem is that this important function of these muscles has only been tested in cadavers or non-living subjects so far. And no one actually knows that how do these muscles work in living human beings. And that's why we cannot treat the shoulder problem successfully, and we keep getting failed results. My research is going to be the first one to investigate this key question in living humans. Firstly, by testing normal healthy shoulders and then comparing it to those who have torn rotator cuff. So to do this, we inserted some electrodes in these muscles and connected them to a computer program. This helped us to see that how do these muscles work when the shoulder joint was pushed in different directions. At the same time, with the help of an ultrasound, we also measured how much the arm bone moved inside the socket when these muscles were working as compared to when they were not working. So by doing this series of experiments, now we know that these 4 muscles don't work together as a group, like we originally thought. In fact, they work differently depending on which direction you're applying the force and which position you're putting your arm in. So by finding all these new answers, now we can design more appropriate and more successful assessment and treatment programs for these muscles. And this will help us to fix your sore shoulder soon. Thank you.
It's got a bit sore just hearing that. For those of you who've done a rotator cuff, you want that research sped up as fast as possible. Thank you, Sangeeta, that was great. Next up is Perla Sanchez. Now, Perla's from the Trobe Law School in the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Commerce, and believe it or not, is a full-time PhD student, but at the same time, her alter ego is a full-time mum. Not sure how that works. She's a Mexican criminal lawyer. Before moving to Australia 2 years ago, she worked at the Attorney General's Office of the federal government. Perla's halfway through her candidature now, but she has already drafted the dedication of her thesis, and it reads, "To my beloved husband and my beautiful children. Without you, I would have finished my thesis a couple of years ago." I think a lot of us can appreciate that. Perla's topic today is protecting the human rights of migrants in Mexico. Perla.
human rights. We have the right to life, liberty, and not to be discriminated or tortured. Those are some of the most fundamental human rights that we may take for granted because it seems obvious that they must be respected. They are so important that they are established in international agreements signed by a country for their protection. Sadly, horrible crimes such as human trafficking, rape, murder, or torture happen every day. Human rights violations are a reality. And of course, some groups are more vulnerable than others. My research deals with the violation of human rights of a particular group, illegal immigrants. Immigrants are people who move from one place to another, usually looking for better opportunities. Their reasons may be conflicts, oppression, poverty, violence, even natural disasters. Migration is common, but when these people travel without legal documentation, they become illegal. And for that reason, they are very vulnerable. My thesis is focused in the large number of illegal immigrants from Central America who cross Mexico trying to get to the United States. We're talking about approximately 400,000 Central Americans crossing the southern Mexican border every year. 400,000 people is about the population of Tasmania. When these people cross Mexico as illegals, they're in a survival race. On one hand, they try to evade migration authorities. But on the other, because of drug dealing problems in Mexico, they try to avoid becoming victims of crime and abuse in the hands of drug-related gangs or corrupted officials, who may rob them, kidnap them, forcibly recruit them to carry drugs into the US, rape them, or even kill them. Many of these abuses constitute serious violation of human rights. Mexico has signed international agreements for the protection of these rights. Therefore, the government has an international obligation to protect those migrants, regardless of their legal status. This is what my research is about. In Mexico, despite the existence of laws for the protection of migrants, blatant and even cynical violations of their human rights are happening. The law is not working. My project aims to find the missing link between the law and the social reality. Why isn't the law working? I seek to find the particular deficiencies of the government in the enactment of public policies for the protection of these migrants, and how other countries and the international community could demand from Mexico the fulfillment of its international obligations. Illegal immigrants need protection, and the Mexican government needs to start doing something about it. Yes, political and economic factors play an important role, but when it comes to the protection of humanity, we ought to take every necessary step to reach our goal. My research is my first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Perla. Believe it or not, we only have one to go. Katie Buckley is from the School of Allied Health in the College of Science, Health and Engineering. Now, Katie's research involves collaborating with employees who critically rely on voice so they can best support their voices while at work. She's a qualified speech pathologist and ergonomist with particular interest in elite sports coaches. Katie is actually an improviser, focusing on improvised musical comedy. She's an ensemble member of the Big Hoo-Ha, which you may know has alumni which include Tim Minchin and Claire Hooper. Today, Claire's going to talk on the topic Voice of the Game, Everyone's Game. Claire. Forgive me for calling you Claire instead of Katie. I'm losing it too. Stage is yours.
In 2007, Joyce Walton was struggling with her voice. While teaching, she noticed it was feeling tense and it sounded hoarse. So she went to her school board for support, but her employers had no idea how to support her voice in the workplace, so they didn't step up to the plate. 3 years later, she was awarded £150,000 in compensation, the largest settlement for voice injury ever. In making the judgment, the court noted that voice needs to be something we think about at work. As a teacher, she was part of the 50% of the workforce that rely on voice. And if you couldn't do your job without talking, that might include you. Which means that you're more likely to experience voice problems at work. But most of us have no idea how to support our voices in the workplace. And unfortunately, industry and research often give sweeping statements about what we should do. Take a day off from talking. It's really not that functional. This is where my research comes into play, with a previously unconsidered group of workers, elite sports coaches. I spent over 320 hours working with sports coaches to find how they use their voice at work through interviews, focus groups, questionnaires, and workplace observations, which delightfully often captured me on national television. You might think that your work is fields apart from sports coaching, but what I found was that coaches' vocal demands and the hazards at work were actually similar to other professions. Coaches talk lots without having rest. They use the phone. They forget to hydrate. They crouch while talking. Even occupational hazards that are impacted on by organisations, like making them still coach even when they're sick, were experienced by coaches. And while all these coaches battled with vocal health, none of them really knew what to do to support their voices in work. But my PhD had one more world-first step. Using coaches' experiences and the more broadly known literature about voice, we looked for solutions. Together, the coaches and I developed tailored voice support strategies for them to use at work. One of the popular ones was repositioning players in front of a coach so that all could see and hear what was said during a noisy activity like a huddle. These strategies had significant impact on voice. But guess what? That wasn't the most exciting part. By participating in my research, these coaches had learnt to self-monitor their voices and started to self-develop strategies. And this game changer lasts well beyond my research. The voice of your game may not happen on a basketball court. It might be in a classroom, in a meeting, or even at the end of a phone. But whether you coach a team, teach a student, or share your own research, your job may just go the distance by using tailored strategies. We need to utilise this research to find better ways of supporting your voice in the workplace. Being vocally healthy should be everyone's game. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie. Now, folks, we are going to take a short break now for about 15 minutes because we need to give our judges time to compare notes and evaluate who our winners are for today. So we'll invite you all into the foyer for some tea. At that time, of course, you have the voting slips you should be filling in. You can also do the voting online via the SurveyMonkey system, and the red team will be tallying all the votes up together so that we can announce the People's Choice Awards shortly after we get back. So we'll see you in about 15 minutes. And a big thank you to all of our contestants so far.
Those of you who are still deliberating about the popular vote, we're actually counting very soon. So there's a big red box being held up by Jeanette, so if you could throw your vote in there, we'll actually be counting about now.
Welcome back, everybody. Is it just me, or were there two microphones here before? I'm getting older. Okay, so first of all, I'd just like to commend all of our speakers today. From my perspective as a public broadcaster who interviews some 130, 140 odd guests a year, it is rare that I see that sort of standard consistently, 8 people in a row. It's amazing. Well done. I know you've all worked very hard. Your families and friends probably sick to death of hearing these presentations. They'll still have to hear it beyond today, I'm sure. But well done. It was an exceptional performance from each of you, and I wish you all the best of luck in whatever happens in the next few minutes. Now, we've reserved the pleasure of announcing the People's Choice Runner-Up and Winners Awards today to Jane, Deputy Vice-Chancellor here, Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor, sorry, Jane, who will come up to the stage now, say a few words and announce the winner. And then, I'm not sure if you guys down the back are ready for this, but the winner will be asked to say a few words after they receive their award. Jane.
Thanks very much indeed. This is truly a highlight of my year, each year now for the last 3 or 4 years, because it really is a pleasure to see and hear the best of the best in the 3-minute thesis competition. And I think each time, and today is no exception, we're thrilled, informed, delighted, and I think most simply just amazed by the capacity of La Trobe's students to distill really complex and significant studies into a not merely digestible, but actually a wonderfully tasty lozenge of erudition. So we know when we listen to the precision and excitement emanating, say, from David Attenborough on TV, that ideas well communicated are enormously engaging. And I think what we've seen today as well, that they're not only enormously engaging, they're enormously important as part of our broader public discussion about ideas in a complex world. I mentioned David Attenborough, but I did note this year that all of our finalists are women. That was interesting. So, look, but for all of you and all people who've competed in other versions of this at college level and so on, can I just sincerely thank you for your effort and time that you've put into it. So 3 minutes. We did take a bit longer than that in determining winners from among a really stellar lineup. And we do have information, first of all, I think, thank you, Kelly, about the People's Choice Award winner. And the People's Choice Award winner for being seen, being heard, being believed is Rachel Loney Howes. Yeah, where is she? Rachel, fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you.
That's great. I think it would be great to feel so loved. All right. Going to the judges' decisions, we did actually have interesting discussion, which is one way of saying that we couldn't split easily some of our views and decisions. So as a consequence, I decided in the best traditions of the 3-minute thesis that again this year we would award a prize to second runner-up. Last year I think it was Keith Nugent who paid for it. This year it's me as Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor who will pay for it. So a $1,000 second runner-up prize, which today goes to Lisafurlong. Lisa, congratulations. Fantastic. Well done. Our first runner-up today is Perla Sanchez. And then finally, our 3-minute thesis winner for La Trobe, from La Trobe University for 2016. We're very pleased to announce that the winner this year is Sangeeta Rati. I would just invite Sangeeta to say a few words, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to thank judges and audience for choosing me as the winner. Thank you. I could not have done it without my supervisors, Rod Green and Nicholas Taylor. Thank you for supporting me every time and always being so encouraging me in these events and having the faith and confidence in me that I can do it. Thank you very much. Thank you to Kelly for all the preparation, and I think this event has really helped me in talking about my research to anyone. Like, I can explain it to my mom, my dad, anyone, like what I'm doing, my friends. So it has made me like really confident what I'm doing, why I'm doing, without boring people. So yeah, so I think this event has really helped me in understanding my research a lot. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to participate next year. So thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I do not envy you for the choices you had to make. Well done. Just a few items before we all leave. First of all, the Trans-Tasman competition is on the 2nd of October, so that's the UQ one. So there's some information, I think, somewhere on this. Also to advise that the Research Week tour of the Trobe Paleo Science Lab is on at 3:45 today. So make sure you get along to that. You know where you are, I don't. I'm sure you can all find it. Sounds very worthwhile. And additionally, the Research Week showcase is on at 5:15 today, so another important one. Now, for those of you who did win, and in fact all the contestants today, it'd be great if at the end you could just stick around so Michelle, who's been happily snapping photos, could get another still shot of you being handed your award. We'll pretend it's live from Jane, because you're so excited to get off the stage. You ran out a little bit quick, so we're going to make sure we get those for your ever-loving, cherishing walls, and you can put them up. A big thank you to Jane Long and to all our championship judges today for doing such a magnificent job. To the graduate research coordinators who organised the department and school competitions leading up to the final, and to Fazi Mohammed Fazi and Miriam Arabai, who coordinated the college finals. Thank you to all of you for doing that. Thank you very much. And of course, to all of you for coming along. It's great to see the room fill up for these sorts of events. It's important that our contestants have an audience to make them feel nervous and appropriately freaked out by these sorts of scenarios. But I think you'll agree with me that they all did exceptionally well. So thanks for everyone coming along today, and a huge thank you to our contestants for all the effort they put in. On that note, I'll close the competition for this year, and hope for those of you who have seen what you did today and liked it, you might enter next year or re-enter for those who weren't successful. It's a great competition, something that should be supported, and it's been my pleasure to be your MC today. Have a great afternoon.